Everybody, this is chapter 3, section 7, talking about absolute values in equations and in inequalities, okay? A lot of stuff on this one. Really got to make sure that we go back and look at our notes. Might be a little bit confusing here because we're working first with equations, and then we're going to take that and work with inequalities, and there's just some different stuff that we have to do with inequalities, okay? So first off, whenever you have absolute values, whether it's an equation or whether it's inequalities, you're always going to get two answers for solutions, okay? Always two answers. So the first thing you really got to make sure you know that you're going to have to get two answers. That's going to come from having two different equations. So we'll get into that. There is going to be quite a bit of notes here too, and I do go kind of quick. So please make sure if you feel like you're falling behind a little bit, just hit pause, get yourself caught up, and then get back and hit play, and we'll keep moving, okay? The two things we need to know with doing absolute value is it's a two-part setup, and in this case, two parts of a solution, okay? First off, we have to isolate the absolute value. Absolute value is these bars, and we just need to get them alone. All right, so what will happen is, I'll just do an example over here. You might have something like this, okay? Okay, the absolute value is not alone, okay? So I've got to move this to get it alone. Okay, so that's one thing we got to understand. Another way we might see it is if it's like this, where this is the absolute value, it's not alone. So I'm going to have to divide the 2 to the other side to isolate it. So that's what isolating means. You have to get the absolute bars alone. Okay, and then we need to split. Second step is to split the absolute value into 2 problems and solve it, okay? So if you guys could go ahead and write down this absolute value equation, and we'll kind of just do that really quick, okay? And if you write this down, first step over here, when I write my first equation, is to, first off, I'm going to back up for a second, fast here again. Is the absolute value isolated? And there is nothing over here with it, so yes, it's isolated, so I can move on. Now, ignore the bars. That means forget that the bars were there and just rewrite the equation and solve it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add 18 to both sides, and I get x equals 23. So, pretty easy, okay? For the second one, ignore the bars again. So, okay, take the bars away, and I'm going to rewrite it, but you need to write this down. For the second one, ignore the bars and use the opposite of everything that was outside the bars. Well, this 5 is outside the bars. So I need to do the opposite of that. The opposite of 5 is -5. Okay, so that just really critical. It's a process. My analogy is that, In-N-Out, there's a process the way they make their burgers. And if you're the guy or lady that's making the burgers, you have a process to make that burger the best possible burger. So when it goes out the window or out onto where people are eating, the dining room, it's going to be the best burger every time. And if we screw up the process, the burgers won't be the same, and people are going to start complaining. So you have to know steps. That's why it's important to go back and reread your notes. I'm going to add 18 again. It's the same step as I did in the first question, so that's kind of nice. But over here, I'm going to get a different answer. I get x is 13, and that's one of the first things I said to you. You're going to get 2 answers. Well, in this case, I got a positive 23 and I got a positive 13 as numbers that when I plug them back in there, it makes it work. And let me just do this. First answer we got was x is 23, so I plugged 23 in for x, and 23 minus 18 is 5. What is the absolute value of 5? Well, if it's positive inside there, I just keep it positive. I get 5 equals 5. Okay? If I go back and I take the second answer, okay, I'll do it over here. 13 minus 18, absolute value is equal to 5. Well, 13 minus 8 is negative 5. But what is the absolute value of negative 5? So remember, you get a negative sign inside there, you make it positive. So that both those answers made that true. Okay? All right. So big time, you got to go back and look at those notes. Okay? If you guys go ahead and write these two equations, absolute value equations, and draw a number line with it. Okay? And know that I'm going to get two answers. I'm going to get two answers because I have to rewrite them twice. But first question is, and we'll start with this one right here, is it isolated? It's not. There's a 2 over here with it. Okay, so what I have to do is move it. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I'm going to get the absolute value of x equals 7. Okay, now I'm going to get two equations. Ignore the bars, so I get x equals 7. Well, nothing left for me to do. So there's one of my answers, but this, I got to get two answers. The second one, ignore the bars, okay, but everything outside the bars, do the opposite. So I make it a negative 7. So that was a pretty easy question, but we had to remember to isolate it, okay. If I'm going to go ahead and graph that, it's going to, because it's equal to, and I know we've been doing inequalities for a while, but remember, if it's equal to, it's a solid point. So find 7, I think it's right here, put a solid point. Find negative 7, I think it's right here, put a solid point. There's no lines here because it can only be equal to those two parts. There's no less than or greater than. Okay. Second equation here, is it isolated? Yes, there is nothing over here with the absolute value, so I'm good. I'm going to rewrite it by ignoring the bars. And in this case, I have to solve it. So I'm going to add 2, and I get x equals 6. Let me erase this stuff over here since we're done. And then I get a second equation. So I rewrite it, ignore the bars, but this 4 was outside the bars, so I do its opposite. So it's negative 4, solve it again. And I get negative 2, okay? So 0, at positive 6, I think it's right here, put a point. At negative 2, put a point. Those two, and plug them back in. Take those and plug them back into the original problem and see if it works. Okay. Okay, so if you go ahead, you just need to write down this formula here. Talk about distance or doing the absolute value of it. And the reason why we're doing absolute value is if we'll read it, someone started skating 100 feet away from me, and they're skating towards me, but then they're going to pass me and they're going to keep on going. The person is skating at a constant rate of 20 feet per second. Their distance d from you in feet after t seconds is given by the equation, and it's given by this equation. At what time is she 40 feet from you? Okay, now we got to think about this, and let's draw a picture because pictures kind of help us. Here's you. You're the x. Here's your friend, and I'm going to use the letter S for speed. At some point, they're 40 feet away from you, and then at some point, they're going to be 40 feet past you. Okay? But they started 100 feet away from you, and they're going at a speed of 20 feet per second. Okay, so what I need to do here is I need to write two equations from the absolute value. So let's go through our steps here. Is it isolated? Yes, there's nothing over here with the absolute value. Did they give me a distance in this case? They did, 40 feet. Okay, so I do this, and that's going to be my absolute value equation I'm going to work with. So solve it. Okay, first time when I solve it, I ignore the bars. Okay, and I'm really solving it for t. Okay, so that means I'm going to have to subtract 100 from both sides, and I get this. Okay, and now I have to divide by what's in front of the t. Well, remember, it's a negative value, so be careful with this one. Okay, it's just going to go away over here. You're left with t, but you got to remember, I'm dividing two negatives, so that means my answer is going to be positive. What's 60 divided by 20? It's 3. Okay, but because it's absolute value, I have to do the rewrite again. So ignore the bars, and I'm going to make that 40 that I start with, I have to do the opposite because it's outside the bars. I'm going to get that. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and subtract it, both sides, and I'm going to get negative 20t over here again, dividing by negative 20 again, and I'm going to go way over here. I'm left with t, and 140 divided by negative 140 divided by negative 20 is a positive answer, so 140 divided by 20 is 7. Okay, so starting at 100 feet away, it's going to take them 3 seconds to get 40 feet away from you, and then it's going to take them 70 seconds to go by you, or 7 seconds to go by you and go 40 feet past you. Okay. All right. Really, that's a physics question. If you guys ever get to physics, you'll probably do a bunch of that stuff. Okay. All right. On this equation, if you have a printed handout, this number actually was a 10, and I've changed it because it makes us, we're trying to teach you how to solve these things, and then this one gave me an answer of no solution, and it took me a long time to get to no solution. I just didn't think that was really fair. I want you to solve a question right now. We'll get to no solutions another time and talk about it. But right now, I just want you to solve it. So I changed it. So if you're just doing this on paper, no big deal. But if you have a printed version of this, I did change this number to positive 15. Okay. All right. So look at this question. You know, first thing I know is I'm going to get 2 answers. Second, or the thing I really need to start then doing is the absolute value isolated? And it's not. Okay, it's got this plus 12, and then it's got this 3 that's multiplying it. So you got to solve it. Now we're doing this like a regular equation. I'm going to use PEMDAS in reverse. So I'm going to subtract the 12 from both sides. I'm going to get this. Okay, it's still not isolated, so I got to get rid of the 3 here by division. Because remember, that says multiplication. It's like I would have had to have distributed, but don't isolate it. Okay, so you have to go against some of what we've kind of taught you with other math. All right, that goes away, and over here you're going to get a 1. Okay, so I get this equals 1. All right, so I'm just going to rewrite it over here so that we're good. Understand that's an absolute bar. Okay, all right, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it, ignoring the bars, and I'm going to solve it. I'm going to get rid of the 9. I'm going to get negative 8. I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2, and I get x is negative 4. Okay, there we go. But remembering now that, hey, I have to get two answers, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it, ignoring the bars, but that's outside the bars now, so I get a -1. I'm going to go ahead once again and divide by, or subtract, I'm sorry, by 9, and I get -10. Be careful with your math. I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2, and I get -5. Okay. Plug both of those in, see what happens, see that you get the correct answer. Okay. Or it comes out to be true. But you're plugging it back in to that equation. Okay. All right. So isolate. Make sure you got that down. All right. Here we go. Isolating now with an inequality. So there's a rule here that we need to make sure we have. For the second inequality, so remember we have to rewrite this to get our two answers. For the second inequality, you're going to need to also flip the direction of the inequality symbol, okay? And then still do the opposite of anything outside. Okay? And you still want to make sure that it's isolated, okay? So I don't think we do this to you, but here we go. Okay, so we're going to get two equations. I'm going to take it exactly the way it is, ignoring the bars, and solve it. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 8, and I get n is less than, greater than, or equal to 3. Okay, but I'm going to get a second one. So take in this new rule, change the direction of the sign and do the opposite of what's outside. I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 8. N is less than or equal to -3. Okay, so we're going to graph these. Find 3. Using the symbol, it's greater than or equal to, so solid point, and the arrow's telling me to go that way. That was this inequality, but now I got the second one, -3. It's still a solid point because it's also equal to, but now it's telling me to go that way. All right. Okay. Let's do the second one. If you could write this down in the number line 2. Is it isolated? Yes, the absolute value is isolated. So I'm going to go ahead and write it, ignoring the bars and solving it. Okay. But I got to get that second answer, so I'm going to take it the way it's written, but I'm going to change the direction of the sign and do the opposite of the number. So that 1 is outside, I make it a -1. Once again, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I get x is greater than or equal to +3. Okay, so find my two numbers. 5 is right here, I believe. Solid point because it's equal to, but greater than goes this way. Second one, I find 3. Solid point because it's also equal to, but now it's telling me to go this way. Okay, let me do this one really fast. We'll do this in our heads, some mental math. I'm going to pick 4, right? So that's in between 3 and 5. I'm going to put 4 back into the original equation. 4 minus 4 is 0. The absolute value of 0 is 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to 1? No, it's not. So by having this gap between those, it tells me that anything in between those two numbers will not work. And 4 was obviously the easiest thing to plug in. Okay? Okay, if we come down here to this this inequality here, and I'm going to solve this, and then just write this down for me, please. And this is what different businesses might be using when they're packaging something. Okay, so if you went in this question, we got this company that makes crackers, so Ritz crackers. And they have to, by law, they have to label how much weight or volume of crackers is actually in the box. And that could be really tough to do because some person's not measuring it out and putting it in the box. The machine's doing it. Machines don't always work exact. Okay, so the government said you have to give us weights, but we'll let you smudge it one way or another. Okay, so you can have a little bit more, or you could have a little bit less than what the box is really saying it contains. Okay, and as a business, I don't want it to load it with more than I'm supposed to, because then I'll start losing money over a period of time. But if I'm always consistently under, putting less in than I'm supposed to, then people are going to get mad at me because I paid for this much because that's what the box said, but you're giving me way less. I'm not getting my money's worth. Okay, and it's kind of minimal sometimes, but people are wanting to get what they're paid for. Okay, so the government says, okay, we'll let you kind of fudge it either way. All right, so once again, I got an absolute value, and the government's saying I can vary how much the weight is in the box by 5 grams in this case. So maybe that's one cracker, I don't know. So once again, I'm going to get 2 equations, and I'm trying to figure out how much is the allowable weight that I can't have. I'm going to rewrite basically for this first one exactly the way it is, solve it for W. I'm going to add 213, and I get W is going to be less than or equal to 218. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So ignore the bars. Flip the sign. Okay, second answer inequality, I flip the sign. Anything outside the bars, I do its opposite. Okay, so I'm going to add 213 again, and I get this. Okay, so with that, I'm sorry, this would be 208. Timeout. My fault. Make that change, please. Sorry. Okay. What that's telling me is that my weight has to be less than 218, which is actually more than we're supposed to start with. I'm supposed to label every box that has 213 grams of weight in it. Okay. I can go up to 218. That's what this one's saying. But I can't go less than 208 grams. Okay, so it's given me a range here of between 208 grams, the weight that it was, I can put on the label because I have to label how much is actually in there. And so anywhere in that range between 208 and 218, I can have in the box. Okay, I'm supposed to shoot for that, but a cracker's a cracker, and one less or one more will make the weight maybe change. Okay. All right, so some big stuff there. You really got to make sure you go back over your notes. Biggest thing I want to get you guys to do is absolute value. So AB is always 2 answers. Okay, so you have to write 2 equations. Okay, and there's some rules there. And then if it's an inequality, you're still going to write 2 inequalities, but you need to flip the symbol in the other direction. Okay. All right. So some unique things to each one, but you need to make sure that first off that any absolute value is isolated. And I showed you a couple different examples, so that's why I really need you to go back and look at your notes and go over that. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good one. If you need anything, please make sure you get a hold of me and we'll get it fixed.